Okay, cheers everyone. Thank you so much for joining us back again. Sunday evening. And I guess, trust me, this 1 hour for you all is going to be so much knowledgeable. The sharing of knowledge that we are going to do, we are going to talk about a lot about the best practices, knowledge from the industry experts. And more interestingly, when I did this polling, I guess this is one of the poll that I have received over 90% of acceptance that yes, we want something where we can hear the industry professional, how they use the DevOps culture and practices and tools to increase their productivity. So here on demand, I'm grateful to a few of my friends at Red Hat who has happily accepted this request. But again, before we jump on to our actual thing, disclaimer that while I and my entire friends have work at Red Hat, and this is what we are doing out of our personal passion. This is nowhere an official channel of Red Hat, and it is not being endorsed by Red Hat at all. Whatever we are going to discuss today, it's purely because what we know that yes, open source is something that we all should take care. And interestingly, this is what the community does for one another. So what I want to say before we introduce our guests that currently DevOps is more like a philosophical moment and not yet a precise collection of practices, descriptive, or the perspective that we saw. So, what we need to do as a beginner, as an experienced fellow to practices DevOps, I guess this is what our main agenda is going to be for the today's session. So, what interestingly, I would love to see all. Please feel free to put down the questions for our panel today and we'll take on the questions because I want to keep it more interactive. I don't have much questions for them. I want your questions to bombard in the chat window, and hey, we are going to take them up. So let me introduce one of them. So first name is Shweta. She is an experienced software engineer with specialty in product development, looking always looking to join an organization where she has a strong project management and what I should say, the analytical skills, which are useful in the delivery of product. And that's the reason she always focus on the customer needs, and she found her love in Red Hat, and here we are. So she happens to be a DevOps engineer, and today she is working with Red Hat Middleware team. I should not say much. Let's hear it from Shweta, what she does. Hey, Shweta, cheers, and welcome to
Hi.
Cheers with God.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been like great pleasure to be here in this channel today. Hi, thank you all the viewers for being here. I'm working with Red Hat as a software engineer. I have like 4.5 years of like DevOps experience, like where I started my career with the DevOps things. So it's a good experience here in like Red Hat open source, like how the tools things will be working in DevOps culture and all. Yeah, I'm enjoying the life here. It's good.
Awesome, and that's the best part of the open source culture that we are working for the industry leaders for open source solution and whatnot. Red Hat is always known for that. So thank you so much, Shweta, for accepting our request, and let's bring on our another team member, or I should say our friend. So he's one of the senior among this panel, and he's working as a senior software engineer. And you guessed it right, it's our friend Harsh. So Harsh is currently working on the cloud native open source Java frameworks. And if I have to just describe his previous, because we have titled him as a senior person among us. So definitely, he's previously worked with the leading oil field service providers in the world. He has also worked with the Fortune 500 restaurant chains of the US, one of the largest banking groups of Netherlands, and one of the largest telecom giants of Netherlands. So what not, I thought that he will be the right person to guide us that as a beginner, what are the different challenges you face? And more interestingly, as an experienced fellow, what industry demands from you? So Harsh, thank you so much for joining, man. Cheers.
Hi, Gaurav. Thank you, Gaurav, for having me on this panel, and I would also like to thank the viewers for being here. So, yeah, I have more than 7 years of overall IT experience, and I would like to say that starting from requirement gathering to deploying on production, I have almost had my hands dirty on almost anything. And as Gaurav said, I have worked with many different companies and many different on many different areas. So yeah, I would like to say the experience at Red Hat has been very good, and Gaurav has also been very helpful in bringing all the topics, not just related to technology, but all of them on YouTube in front of viewers. So yeah, thanks a lot, Gaurav, again.
No, definitely people like you, Harsh, who has always supported, is something the motivation that lies behind me. So that's the part, but I don't want to talk about me today. It's all about you and all others. So let me bring on our third member of our panel, and I believe we at least we all three of us discussing. He happens to be our poster boy. So the person I'm gonna call is Rishabh, and he's a proficient in Java and Spring Boot. He always wishes, and his words always say is that wants to get better in containers orchestration and other DevOps operations for agile projects. He has an extensive experience in designing and implementation of CI/CD workflow using Jenkins and GitHub Actions. More interestingly, whenever I have heard him giving the talks, he hasn't demonstrated experience in developing application based on microservices architecture or deploying them on cloud or platform as a service infrastructure with high availability and on-demand scaling. So I thought that he will be a great addition to our panel, and he can guide all the viewers that what DevOps is actually meaning and how we can use it. So hey Rishabh, thanks for joining, man. Cheers.
Hi, Gaurav, and thank you for this opportunity. So happy to be here, and thank you all the viewers for tuning in today. And yeah, like you, like Gaurav, like I said, I've been a regular viewer of your channel, and I'm so excited to be here. So thank you for inviting me.
Right. So before we jump on, so viewers, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat window. And all the team members, if you want to know some funny side of Harsh, Rishabh, and Shweta, I guess your right time to put down your questions, because we are not going to only ask these folks the technical questions, because that's what Cheers with Gaurav means. So let's explore the other side of them also, while how they make the fun. Because as I said, DevOps is not about the tools and technologies that we use. It's all about culture we adopt. And Cheers with Gaurav is known to bring some smiles and other things as well along with it. So let's try to dig what viewers we have. And before that, I jump on to the viewers part, the question and answers. I just want to ask you all guys. So you all have been into the industry since like at least 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 long years. And at least before that, we were in the colleges, you have been a scholar, and now you are working for Red Hat. Means above all, now being at Cheers with Gaurav, how does that feel, man? Means, do you think that you have won the Oscar, or like the job is done?
Yeah, I think I joined industry just to be on Cheers with Gaurav.
Harsh, you are my friend, man. Thanks so much, man. So, guys, do listen to these experts. Look what senior thinks about us. I'm the right. I was saying it right. Okay. No, that's the. So, thank you so much, Harsh, for building that part up. But before we jump, so according to you guys, what do you think? What is DevOps? What is open source to you? Harsh, let's start with you.
Yeah, I would say DevOps is a way of developing things, and when generally DevOps has broken the silos between two teams. Earlier, there used to be a separate operations or deployment team, which used to
Right.
deploy things, and there was a development team who was developing things. But DevOps is a concept which has broken the silos between both of them, and now there is a single team who can manage development as well as deployment, and it can singularly make the go-to-market approach easier, faster, and leaner. So we can have more iterations of product fastly and quicker. Bug fixes are also comparatively faster than earlier, and yeah, so and there are many other approaches I can talk about that. From DevOps now, teams are moving to GitOps, or even moving shifting left, DevSecops. So
Right.
yeah, the market is changing a lot, I would say.
I, I would completely agree to that thought, that it's no more only DevOps. Many suffix and prefixes are getting added to it. Shweta, you started your journey as a DevOps engineer, if I'm not right.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay,
I
so
started my
you
career.
started your journey as a DevOps engineer, and when was the first thought you encounter of entering into the open source world?
When I joined the first organization, like I was not even aware like how the DevOps things will be working, because like we used to study like okay, waterfall model, like requirement analysis, those things and all will be done. Okay, we'll be writing code, and like okay, some team will be deploying that, and like it will be tested. So that was like my imagination with the before I joining the organization. So once I got into the IT industry, like I got to know okay, this is something like where we'll be working as a team. The DevOps is something which where like the collaboration will be good, and also like we need to reduce the manual stuffs instead of repeating the task again and again like manual things. we need to come up with some good ideas and like tools, technologies, new technologies. As like we know, like continuous integration, continuous deployment. The same way, like it is like continuous learning. We'll be keep on updating with the new technologies, tools, and all. So and like yeah, as I entered the open source like organization, it is like very much open to everything. Like or we can come up with like, any ideas or like you can try to test your code anywhere like or like the presenting something. So you can do the POC on the new technology tools and all. They are ready to accept the things. Okay, yeah, if you are coming up with like GitOps, like that is fine. Like okay, try the things and all. So they'll be accepting the idea. So that is like very great here. So I like that. And even the tech don like where which is the continuous integration and CI/CD things. So it's
Right.
nice.
Right. And I guess you mentioned the right point, and that's the biggest learning for us. Ki DevOps is nowhere limitizing you to CI/CD only. It's a continuous learning process. So that's the best part. And thank you so much, Shweta, for bringing that part up. So now let's move to Rishabh. So Rishabh, you have been using a lot of GitHub Actions and Jenkins and many other tools, as I mentioned, Spring Boot, Java, and blah blah blah. So as a individual, do you think that still people have this thought in mind that to be a DevOps engineer you need to learn a lot of tools? Do you agree to that thoughts?
Yes, definitely. So, like we discussed earlier, right? DevOps is not a tool or a programming language that you basically learn and then you call yourself a DevOps engineer. But DevOps, I would say, is a journey that basically you cover. So it's not just a set of tools or languages that you learn. So it's a journey that you have to basically cover and then learn a lot of tools along with it. So basically, what DevOps does is it basically uh, enhances the way you basically manage the entire life cycle of your application. Now, depending upon the phase where your application lifecycle is. Say, for example, there are certain phases. Say, for example, develop phase, testing phases, deployment phase, and then there are deploy and then data operations, monitoring, and stuff like that. Now, DevOps is something which covers the entire scope of this application's lifecycle. Depending upon the scope, you basically need to deal with a lot of tools. Say, for example, when you are in develop phase, you need to understand the basics of some programming languages. Let's say you are into some testing phases. You need to understand what are JUnits, how different testing frameworks work, how they work in tandem with each other, how they link to each other and things like that. Similarly, when you move on to the deploy phase, you basically need to know about different build tools. Let's say for example, you have a project in Java, you need to understand Maven and Gradle, which are the automation build tools for those languages. So you need to understand such build tools. And then when we move on to things like whether you want to deploy your application in bare metal or say for example cloud services, you need to understand platforms like Kubernetes and Openshift. So like I said, it's a journey that you basically are traveling, and it's not a day one or day two thing, right? You learn as you go along, and depending upon the phase of the application lifecycle, you need to deal with a lot of different products, and you need to understand how each of them works, and how they cooperate with each other, how you can integrate those things into different life cycles of the product and things like that. So yes, definitely you have to be aware of all these tools. Not all the tools, but definitely most of them you should be aware of it. Yep.
You make a point, Rishabh, over here that definitely DevOps is not a single process, or I should say a team that should work. It's a collaboration. And I guess Harsh has brought that point very effectively when he said also that DevOps is not just only the practices that you're adopting, it's all about a plan that you execute. Right. So thank you so much for bringing that part up as well. Now, Harsh, you have been working into a lot of industry perspectives since 2013, and you have worked along different industry verticals also. So, what would be the advice you would give to all the youngsters and the beginners, or the people who are kicking off their career during this pandemic? That do you think that stepping into the DevOps as an fresher benefits, or how do you think on that part?
Yeah, I think from my experience that I still think that still there is a long way to go for a DevOps engineer. not just in terms of learning but in terms of opportunities. I still think the industry is nascent in terms of DevOps opportunities. There are still many companies and many verticals who have not converted everything into a DevOps environment or DevOps scenario that we can say. So I would say
Right.
the field is ripe. We can enter the freshers should enter this field. This is the right time, and they should start learning with the basic tools. I think even GitHub and GitLab are providing CI/CD pipelines and all other we can say open source way of contributing to DevOps. So yeah, this is the perfect time for it. And yeah, I guess if if I had this much resources 5 or 6 years back, then I would have definitely jumped on the DevOps ship, I would say.
Right. And I guess not only you, I would have also gotten if I would have been knowing before joining Red Hat that this DevOps is going to have so many prefix and suffix added to it. Definitely. But let's also talk about Shweta. She started her career as a DevOps engineer. So Shweta, as a beginner, did you face any challenge that if any of the person don't know coding much, like take an example, if I don't know coding much, do I still need to learn the basics of DSAs or any programming language to build your career in a DevOps engineer, or it is fine to just learn the tools? Like Rishabh said, that many teams have different tools to be used, and you need to know the architecture. So, do you think learning only tools will help me in landing up a good job, or coding's basics or DSA are also required?
Like as I would suggest is like as a beginner, if you want to start the journey with the DevOps, the basic knowledge of like coding or like scripting, like the shell scripting, those things obviously we'll be studying with our academics, and also the Java things and all also will be studying. I think that will be fine with when we start the DevOps journey. That is fine. Like we'll be understanding how the flow of the code will be. So I don't think so. Like they should be knowing very much core Java or like advanced Java, those kind of things. It is not like necessarily compulsory. Yeah, if they know that will be good. Without that also, yeah, like now we come up with like automation things like Ansible and all, like where we'll be just writing the YAML things. So that will be easy to understand. It is not like something we'll be writing some functions or like oops concepts and all. So with the YAML files, we
Right.
can just define the steps and like we can come up with that. So I prefer like, yeah, we can go with the tools. Like if you know many tools or like even the cloud platforms and all, that will be easy to get into DevOps things and all. It's like now not necessarily required to know the coding language. That's what like I feel.
Right. No, definitely. Everybody has an own perspective, and like while I was also researching about DevOps, I simply felt not enforcing you to learn coding, but at least basics should be clear because you, as a DevOps engineer, has the responsibility to manage the code repository. So you should knowing that how that application architecture work, right? So I believe a bit of that part could be beneficial, and it will add stars to your profile, nothing else. But still you have a lot of technologies to learn, you can go ahead and learn. Okay, awesome. So we have one question coming out for you, Rishabh. Umesh is asking that I'm confused between Agile and CI/CD and DevOps. Could you please share a short definition on that? And I guess it is
Uh,
Agile, not Agile. So yeah, I hope you got it.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
a great question, Mesh. When we talk about all these three concepts, say for example, agile, CI/CD, DevOps, I feel we need to take a step back and then understand what I earlier discussed. The application life cycle. What do I actually mean by application life cycle? Well, there are certain phases, like I discussed earlier. You start with planning and designing, and then you move ahead and then you write your code against those designs. And then, it moves on to building the project, testing the project, deploying, and then operating is the last phase. Now, when we talk about agile, we need to understand how softwares were developed about a decade or so ago. We basically used to follow the waterfall model, like Shweta, discussed. So in waterfall model, what we used to do is, all the phases basically, it did not used to go in parallel. Say, for example, we start with planning phase. So only when the entire planning and architecture is defined, we only then move on to the next phase, that is the development phase. Now, when we are into this development phase, we only do the development of the project, not testing. So it goes on like a waterfall. You start with designing. Once that is over, you move on to development. Once that is over, you move on to testing, then deployment, and then operate. It goes like a waterfall. But with in today's world, time to market is the key thing, right? Where you want to roll the important features of your product to your customers as soon as possible. Time to market is the key. You want to make sure that you release those features to your customers before your competitor does it. And waterfall model actually proved to be a bottleneck in that case. So things started to evolve, and then we moved on to the agile methodology, where we started with a basic minimum requirement, and we basically moved on to the iteration approach. So we now no longer have to wait for the entire design and architecture to be completed before we move on to the development phase. You have your basic architecture defined, and then the developers can start coding against those architectures. Once you have first set of module ready, testers can begin their testing. Once the testing is complete, you can deploy it, and then you can do things like that. So it works in iteration. So that is nothing but your agile process. Now, when it comes to CI/CD and DevOps, uh, I would say it basically deals with the scopes of the application lifecycle management. Say, for example, CI/CD deals with the first 2 to 3 scopes. Say, for example, uh, developing and then building the project. When you consider these two phases, CI/CD deals with automating these two phases. When you increase the scope of your application, say, for example, now you want to deploy along with building and testing it. That is where DevOps comes into picture. It covers the entire scope of the application lifecycle management. So CI/CD, I would say, is a part of DevOps, and you have to implement CI/CD when you are practicing DevOps in your project. So these all concepts are interrelated. I'm sure the moment you understand different phases of an application lifecycle management, the moment you understand how software are being developed back then, from the big monolith to the microservices architecture that we follow today, I'm sure you will start connecting the dots, and you will understand what agile is, what CI/CD is, and what DevOps is.
Right. And I guess that lends up, if I have to summarize, this is where we talk about the deployment strategy for the cloud maturity model. So, Unmesh, I hope you got the answer. And if you still didn't, just go and check out the cloud maturity model, and it will clarify all your doubts. So, Harsh, we have, I guess now you have joined Red Hat, and you being in the senior part, I guess you can give us an highlight which Niket has asked. So, like, tell me how to get the DevOps internship at Red Hat. So even if you don't talk about like the job opportunities, but please feel free to share your thoughts that when somebody applies for an internship at Red Hat for the DevOps, what they should keep in mind.
Yeah, so basically the principles of DevOps, and I would say that why would we use DevOps in any project? Why would any project would want a DevOps intern or DevOps engineer? And I would also say some of the tools of DevOps. There are
Mhm.
many tools which we can use it. Many of them are open source, Chef, Puppet, Ansible, and yeah, those are the two basic requirements that I would say if anybody is targeting for DevOps internship of or DevOps engineer in Red Hat or any other company. And also the person should come with a DevOps approach of collaborating with things, because rather than being a simple engineer, DevOps engineer needs to collaborate across, I would say, more than 4 to 5 teams.
Right.
So yeah, so even collaboration, and that is also a very big point that person should keep in mind while applying for internship or as basically any job for DevOps.
Right. And Niket, for you, I just have one part that do visit jobs.redhat.com, or feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn. So even Rishabh's, Harsh, or Shweta's, or mine, LinkedIn handles you can find in the video description. Connect with us, and we keep on sharing the job opportunities when we have. So feel free to apply, and why not? You might find this panel interviewing you. So please do share that we have watched your session and you might get some extra perks. Just kidding. But yeah, definitely that could be a part. So Shweta, we have one question coming out. I hope you can throw your ideas on it. So Sushil is asking that how OpenShift certification helped me in getting a job as a DevOps engineer. Do you think that OpenShift plays a very important role for the DevOps engineers?
Of course, yes. Like now, like recently, we are moving on with like containerization, container orchestrations, and all. So like
Mhm.
Docker, Docker Swarm, and like same thing like Kubernetes, and now that came with like OpenShift, those things and all. Yeah, it like the certification will play a major role actually to get into the jobs and all, because that will give some tags to our profiles, like where we are satisfied with the like OpenShift certification and all. So with that, like we'll get to know more the serverless features, or like how the open source the project will be working, or the OpenShift how it will work. We can do some like working on that, like we can play nicely with that. So yes, that will give a DevOps role job as well, because as we are divided into teams, like there will be some team with they'll be managing the images kind of things, like Docker file images. Same way like the OpenShift something they'll be managing. So yes, that will give the opportunity to get a DevOps job.
Right, right. And definitely, I guess I have also created a detailed video. So, Sushil, if you haven't watched, you can go and check out what all the OpenShift training and certification Red Hat helps, what options we have. So, I have created that detailed video to check that out. And thank you, Shweta, for mentioning that part up. Definitely, platform as a service plays a very, very crucial role in today's world. And I guess definitely one should look for the admin and the development side of OpenShift, because that is going to be the new norm for everyone. So thank you. So Rishabh, you have one question. What is DevSecops and GitOps? Want to throw some light on it?
Yep. Okay, so DevSecOps, what I would say, is an extension of DevOps.
Mm-hmm.
So if you see the word DevOps, it basically, that mindset is basically to bring the synergy between the operations and the developers team.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we started implementing DevOps into our project, what generally the industry saw was the security issues that came into picture after the application has been deployed in production. That was proving to be a bottleneck in the entire DevOps and CI/CD process.
Mm-hmm.
Now, dealing with security vulnerabilities is something which is time taking and which is very expensive. Say, for example, the moment you discover a security vulnerability in your application which is deployed in production, the iteration, it's very long, right? That security has to be reported by the security team to developers has to start working on the fix. Once that fix is applied, you have to again follow the entire process of building, testing, and deploying it back to the production, which proved to be very expensive and time consuming. To tackle that, the industry has come up with this new mindset called DevSecOps. And if you see the order of these three terms, develop, dev, sec, and ops, sec is placed in the middle. Now, this is very crucial because it's not DevOps sec or it's not sec DevOps, it's dev, sec, ops. So what it basically says is, once you are into the development phase and once you are moving to the next phase, check the security vulnerability before the application is in the operation phase. So since the application is not yet into production, the time and cost of handling those security is much more less than dealing with security vulnerabilities for applications which are in production. So that is all about DevSecOps. And GitOps, I think Harsh also mentioned this term earlier. According to me, what I know about GitOps is it is something which deals with infrastructure as code, I would say. Because when you want to deploy your application, you need some sort of infrastructure. And what happened usually was, DevOps engineers, a bunch of DevOps engineers, what they used to do is, they used to maintain all these, configurations into their local systems. They don't have a, platform where they can collaborate with all these configurations. And every time they wanted to provision a new infrastructure, reproducing the same set of environment was a challenging task. So industry came up with this solution of infrastructure as code. And infrastructure of code involves a hell lot of things. Say, for example, configuration as code, network policy as codes, and things like that. So everything, went into some sort of a code where you don't have to manually, go and say, for example, you're provisioning a Jenkins infrastructure. You want to have a lot of plugins for your projects. Now, let's say you want to reproduce the same environment, you have to again go through the hassle of, provisioning the same environment, installing those same plugins, and things like that. So once you have all the configuration defined as code, all you need to do is click a button, and then things will be reproduced automatically. So I think GitHub came up with this concept saying, just like how you manage your code in our repository, start managing your configurations as well in our repository, so that all the DevOps engineers have a common platform where they can collaborate. And just like how CI/CD works for the code, you detect changes earlier. You also detect, failures for provisioning your infrastructure earlier. So this is how these GitOps things came into picture. And uh, I think I have, not me, my team, when they were deploying our project in one of the infrastructure which comes as a part of Operate First initiative, we kind of used Argo CD, which is nothing but your tool to implement your GitOps. So yeah, that's all about DevSecops and GitOps.
I
Gaurav,
was on mute. I'm sorry, sorry. Yeah, I got it. I was on mute. So sorry. So what I was saying, Ritika, I hope you got the detailed explanation from Rishabh, and I hope you are able to, and so all the viewers. Even I was hearing something, and that actually made me realize that how easily Rishabh has explained that DevSecops. I guess I always used to mix up the security parts and all, but thank you so much for that very simple and apt explanation. So thank you so much, Rishabh, and I hope Ritika you got the answer. And I have a question for all three of you. Who is the newest Red Hatter among all three of you?
It's me, Shweta.
It's you. Okay. Why I just because there is a question coming out of the Ramiz, and he's asking, I want to be a software engineer, but I don't know about that. So why don't you share your thoughts that what software engineer means? Yeah.
It's like obviously keep applying for the like open positions, like wherever if you found, like to be the software engineer in that way, Red Hat kind of things, because it's not like easy to get into an open source company like so easily, because like there will be like a lot of requirement, because they'll be looking for the people who will be contributing to the open source code, like all the projects kind of things, like for example like Knative or even the rel, those things and all, they'll be looking like who will be contributing for those things. So if you are good with like coding things and all, like yeah, obviously if you start working on like or like contributing to the open source, then yeah, you'll get to know many people who will be working on the same thing, so that they'll help you to build your career as a like software engineer. And also like you can start growing your networks and like to get to know more technologies and all. And the even the openings, like whatever will be there, they'll be sharing, okay, yeah. And like there will be less rounds also, like in the interview rounds and all, like if you are contributing to the open source projects and all, like there will not be like any kind of coding things and all, as they'll be knowing that okay, you are contributing something for the open source projects kind of things. So yes.
Right, right. And I guess that definitely makes sense. So, Shweta, why don't you share your experience of getting interviewed Red Hat? What was your first feeling when you received a message or a call or an email from Red Hat that, hey, you have been selected for an interview and this and so date your interview is going to be? How was your experience receiving that email?
I was like very much excited when I got a call for the interview, because like I was like not even knowing okay I'll be getting, because I used to apply and like okay when I'll be getting that is fine and all. So once I got a call, I was like very much excited, and like when I took the call was scheduled, like I had around like 4 rounds of interviews. So like where like they used to ask like regarding that used to be in like different time zones. That was the one thing which will be like it used to be like 11 like 10:30 in the night IST and all. So that was one part, like with as we'll be in virtual things, we used to be in the video calls in the night times and all. But still, like
Right.
they used to be very much collaborative, and like they used to give time to answer for the questions. Like whenever if I ask, they used to take the input. Okay, and like if it is wrong or like something also, even they used to give the inputs. Okay, this is something. Like if I don't know the answers, like they used to tell like what was the things. So like I enjoyed like the interview process, because like it was like very instant. Like after one the next round used to be like within the 1 or 2 days I used to get the results. Okay, like you are selected for the second round. So that was fine. But like, the final round, I got a weekend gap actually. Friday, I got a call like, okay, we have kept you on hold, and like, I was like, oh, the weekend was like somewhat tense with that. But like, when I got a call like on Monday, like, okay, you are selected for this, I was like on Sky that day. It was nice journey with the interview process and all. I used to ask like all like DevOps thing, all my background, like how I worked and all. So it was nice things.
Right, right. Awesome. Thank you so much. Let's move on to Harsh. And Harsh, there is a question from Vinu Gopal asking where to start when an experienced developer wants to start the journey in DevOps. So, over to you, man.
Yeah, I would say that to Venugopal that first, whichever project or whichever organization you are working in, you should check if they are already doing DevOps or not. If your project is already having some part of DevOps or somebody is working on it, then the first thing would be to look around and to analyze how they are doing it and what approach they are using it within the organization. And if the company organization is not yet using DevOps for automating things, then I think open source might be a lot helpful for knowing which tools to use. As Rishabh said that for building we use Maven, Gradle, and for deployment there are many open source tools like even if you use just GitHub, it has end to end what you can say coding, deployment, and all other features of a CI/CD pipeline. So yeah, you can learn many things from open source. There are many articles on it, and I would say we should you should start with GitHub or GitLab, any anyone which you prefer, and build on it, because now even what can say configuring servers or creating Docker images, that also can be done by code. Infrastructure is also can be written in code, just like Shweta said. You just need to write a YAML file and your code would be up deployed, and even the Docker images would be present on the registry files. So I would say just go to GitHub Docs, and maybe we can start there, or any other open source platform.
Right. And Harsh, this is something from my side. Like, I have encountered a lot of students, even in the college days. They lack in like interest, or I don't know. I see only those because I'm personally coming out of a very known coding background. So I see a lot of youngsters nowadays who don't show up their interest in like intensely, or I should say what I word I should say ki, like I don't want to do coding. Means as simple as that. Reason being, the words like AI, ML, or I should say DevOps are so boom into the market, or let's say IoT. So people are seeing that if you, even if you don't do the code, or if you don't know the basics of DSA, I still be able to secure my job. So is that the right perspective? Want to throw some light on that?
Uh, I would not say that I do not want to code would be the right perspective to do anything, but yeah, I would say that yeah, there are many opportunities. It's not just DevOps, but there are no code platforms like
Hmm.
Mendix, where you do not have to code anything. And if you remember in early days, we used to use Visual Studio, and we
Yes.
used to just drag and drop things, and the website would be ready. But
Right.
yeah, I would not say that you should always have a uh, ability to code something, because at the end of the day there is just less things that we can do without just coding. We can provision things, we can manage things, we can even take care of things, we can support. But if you know code, then you would be able to read what actually underlies within all these platforms. So I would say that it's better to learn coding. But yeah, this approach is also not bad, because there are many no code platforms that are coming up. I would say that RPA is also very new branch in IT,
Yes.
which is growing, and I worked with it 2 years back. But yeah, so yeah, that's also a new approach that is growing like a wildfire, I would say.
Right. And I guess I missed the part. Sorry, RPA developers, because definitely, yeah, means I see when I was doing my college in 2012 and while I was graduating 2016, nobody was talking about cloud computing, at least in tier two and tier three cities. But nowadays, I can see the people who are having a lack of interest in coding, they simply start talking about AI, ML, or not completely AI, ML, I should say more on DevOps or system administrator, right? The open source culture has given this freedom that they can start talking about. And one of the key reason for me also to do such podcast is that yes, even if you don't know one thing, you be an expert in other, and there are n number of jobs which are booming. Like one of the mentioned, Harsh, you rightly mentioned low code platforms, and I guess this is something that now industry needs. And I guess I also did one of the sessions with the middleware team about few months back, where we talked about Cogito, the business process automation tool, right? So we have the things coming up where you have the visualization studios, you drag and drop, and the work is done. So thank you so much, Harsh, for giving us that light. And talking about another question coming from, okay, Rami's question we have already taken. Rishab's, we have a question from Ravi. Could you suggest a roadmap to become a DevOps engineer? But before you answer that, I just be on Cheers with Gaurav. So, guys, if you haven't watched my DevOps Roadmap 101 video, please go and like that video also. I have put it down another great video content over there also. But now over to Rishabh. Rishabh, any roadmap for you wish to give them, especially Ravi?
Well,
Yeah.
I was about to tell Ravi that Gaurav already has a video on the entire roadmap for the DevOps engineer. Where he has taken an entire session explaining the end-to-end roadmap for a DevOps engineer. But if I have to provide a summary of that entire session, I would say start with Git. Without knowing Git, you know, it's very difficult to be a DevOps engineer, because all the code, entire configuration, everything lies in GitHub. You need to understand the concept of especially remotes when you are working for the open source. You need to understand how remotes work, upstream, downstream, things like that. Origin. Once you are familiar with the source code management and the version control systems, you know you need to make yourself familiar with at least one programming languages, I would say, because it is the role of a DevOps engineer to build the project and deploy it as well. Now let's say while you're building a project, you encountered some errors. In order to understand those errors, you need to have a good understanding of the underlying programming language. So having knowledge of the underlying programming knowledge is very important, because as a DevOps engineers, you basically exchange responsibilities of a developer as well as an operation guy. So I would say start with Git, learn a programming language. Say for example, when you have decided to take Java, you need to know how you are building a Java project, so that you need to understand how Maven works, how dependencies get resolved, how to especially fix dependencies conflict, because fixing the dependency conflict is one of the biggest challenges that I encounter in my day-to-day life. So that is one very important thing that you need to understand. So testing, say for example, there has been some CVs that has been reported, and you need to upgrade a version of the dependency in your project. Now, let's say when you upgrade a version of a dependency, you might encounter some test failures. Then you need to understand how testing works, how JUnit works, how integration test works. So you need to have an understanding of testing. To implement the CI/CD, you need to know the different CI/CD platforms. Like Harsh mentioned, the easiest way to get started is utilizing the CI/CD platform offered by GitHub, that is GitHub Actions. GitLab also has its own CI/CD platform, and there are number of third-party CI/CD providers. Say, for example, Travis CI, Circle CI. But Jenkins is something which is most advanced of them all, I would say. So if you understand Jenkins, understanding GitHub Actions and CI/CD by GitLab should be a cakewalk for you. And once you understand Jenkins, you have through Jenkins and CI/CD platforms, you have automated the entire build, test, and deploy phase. To deploy, let's say you are deploying in some cloud environment, and like Shweta mentioned, OpenShift and Kubernetes is the de facto standard in the industry today. You need to have the basic understanding of containers when you want to get started with Kubernetes. You need to understand how containers work. You have to understand the difference between virtualization and containerization. And I saw one of the videos where Gaurav clearly mentioned containerization is nothing but isolation of a process, and virtualization is isolation of the hardware. So, bang on explanation, Gaurav. So, so this is the entire roadmap that you basically need to follow. It's a journey, like I said. You need to. It's not something that you will attain in a year or two. You know, there's this book called Learn Programming in 10 Years. So an experienced guy who is in the industry is suggesting you to learn programming in 10 years. DevOps is something which covers a lot more broader concepts. So there's no shortcut to it. As you go along in your corporate journey, you need to pick tools which relates to different phases of application lifecycle management. And like Shweta mentioned, continuous learning is the way to go. So learn continuously, develop yourself. That is the entire roadmap for a DevOps engineer, I would say.
And I guess when we talk about roadmaps, many students reach out to me, sir, iska roadmap, cloud roadmap, or certifications. I guess I cannot even think of designing roadmap. Rightly, you said means for creating that DevOps roadmap, me and my entire team, and thanks to especially Anant who has helped me in creating that download file. It took around like 1 month for us to gather all the knowledge that we have. Means this is not going to work, this should be important, this is for the beginners, this is for the experience, and it is endless, and still we think that we have missed a whole bunch of things which are still left. So do what, wait for the part 2 to release. I don't know when I'm going to put it across, but yes, there is a endless learning so that we can keep on doing. So I can see a very interesting question coming out of Sharath, and I guess Harsh want to take it. I voluntarily picked him up. So yeah, how much SLI or SLO, SLA of services is important for DevOps engineer, and how it is achieved?
Yeah, so thank you. I know a bit about all three of the terms. But
Yes.
yeah, so basically, these three terms are written into the contract whenever any company goes to a client and says that this is how much uptime we would be able to give to you. So yeah, these three terms are very important for DevOps engineer because we need to keep the systems as much up and running as much as possible. So I would say that there were the SLA, SLI, and SLO can be graphed by using some of the tools that are available in the market, and we need to also calculate the throughput of the services. We also need to calculate how much is the response time of the service, so we can scale it accordingly. And based on it, SLI and SLO would be calculated. And for SLA, I think it's uh, it depends on the contract that the company has signed between the company and the client. So it depends on it that how much uptime do we require, and what is the average response times that a service should have. So that depends on the contract, I would say. But yeah, SLI and SLO, that is something that not just DevOps, but I think it's more on the part of SRE that needs to take care of, I would say. It's not much of DevOps work, I would say.
Harsh, want to throw some light between this difference, SRE and DevOps?
Yeah, sure. So DevOps, as I said in the beginning, is from getting the code to the production environment or deployment environment, and SRE's work start somewhere in the end to ahead. I would say that once the site is up, it's the SRE's job to keep it reliable. The data should be perfect, the uptime should be good, and the means the response time also should not be great. So if, for example, if we are going to YouTube, then it should not take more than maybe 2 or 3 seconds, else the user will go away. So that's one of the responsibility of SRE. And as the question mentions, SLI and SLO, those are the terms that are used by generally site reliability engineers to check how much uptime is my website, or how is my service behaving, because we are currently living in a microservices world. So whenever there is something deployed, it's not just one jar file or war file which is deployed. There are maybe 5 or 10 services which are running, or which are scaling at some pace. So we need to define SLI and SLO of each and every service. We need to find how much reliable one service is, or how much unreliable it is, and we need to guide that team to make it more reliable and make it more comfortable, so that our customers or the end users does not get affected of this. So it's, I would say it's there is a bit overlap, but yeah, it's mostly uh, pre-production and post-production roles, I would say.
Okay. I guess I was also writing a script for SRE and DevOps because this is something that many of the people are confused. This simply thinks that a site reliability engineer is also a person who knows about DevOps and who is into the DevOps. So I guess that makes a very clear differentiation. Thank you so much for that, Rishabh. So, Shweta, we haven't heard from you, and the next question comes your way, where Sagar wants to ask that right now I have 3+ years of experience in Linux admin. Now, can I switch to DevOps engineer? What do you think?
It's not like switching, like being knowing the Linux operation things, or like working with Linux, he can just like learn the new technology tools with the whatever the DevOps thing will be using, because Linux is the basic foundation for like DevOps. So like there obviously the DevOps person should be knowing the Linux concepts. So if you know the Linux concepts and all, like yeah, he can start learning like the Jenkins or the Git, how to push the code, the main simple concepts like that. And like Ansible and Docker, those kinds of things, you can just like start learning. There is like it will be mainly concentrating on like SCM, like software configuration tools, like where we'll be just pushing the code, the source code repos. The first step will, the next learning part for him will be like to know the Git and also the continuous integration and deployment tools, CI/CD things and all. Yes, like
Mm.
he can just start learning those kind of tools. Linux, like it is not like switching. He'll get to know more details on like the DevOps tools and technologies, because Linux is obviously needed things to be the DevOps engineer, as per my perspective. Because like we'll be doing the shell scripting for the automation things, so that is obviously needed. And also the most of our code and all will get deployed to the Linux servers and all, the Tomcat. So obviously the Linux is the main basic part with that. So yes, I feel he can just switch with like that.
I guess I cannot agree more because I also one of those who loves like Linux. So I would be having a full hands down on this. That yes, everybody should know Linux, and that is actually a foundational for all the operational fellows. Because majorly when it comes to cloud or infrastructure, Linux is something which you will find. So you should be knowing that part, and operational efficiency, I guess that is what system admin should be knowing, because for me system admin is someone who takes the help from system and admin that. So Linux is the foreground for it as well. So that's the part, and thank you so much Shweta for adding ki bhai shift mat karo, just learn and go ahead and start learning that part up. So while we were talking about tools, Rishabh, you mentioned a lot, and Sushil has one question: how Prometheus and Grafana plays an important role in DevOps, and I guess Harsha is also working on the service mesh, or Quarkus, whatever. So
Quarkus.
do you want to talk about, yeah, Quarkus? So Rishabh, do you want to talk about this, and then we also talk about Quarkus a bit? So Prometheus and Grafana, do you think plays a very important role?
Yes, definitely. Like I said, operations is an important aspect of DevOps. And when it comes to operations, monitoring is a very key thing, right? This is
Mhm.
where Prometheus and Grafana comes into picture. So the moment we, start, switching from the monolith to the microservices architecture, your
Mhm.
entire application is basically distributed among certain smaller components which basically interact with each other. And then you start facing problems like distributed logging, distributed tracing. Everything is distributed. Now you need some sort of a software which consolidates all those logs from different modules. Say for example, even a module might have a number of replicas, from which replica the issue has come from. So these kind of information is all aggregated by platforms like Prometheus and Grafana. So yes, definitely, DevOps in DevOps, these two tools definitely plays a very important role. And in addition, since we were discussing about SRE and DevOps, uh, uh, what I feel is, when it comes to DevOps, it's all about getting your application deployed to production. That is day one, and SRE takes over from day two. So DevOps is like, भैया application पहुंचा दिया हमने production में. Now
Ah,
it's your job.
it's your job,
Take care from here on. And
right?
Prometheus and Grafana is even more important for an SRE than it is to a DevOps guy, because they have to continuously monitor your application in the production. So as a DevOps engineer, my role is to get it to the production and make sure it works good till day one. SRE guy will take care of your operations from day two, and Prometheus and Grafana is something which is definitely very important for an SRE guy.
Right. So thank you so much, Rishabh. And Harsh, do you think Sankesh is asking that is DevOps included in full stack developer roadmap? What are your thought on that?
I think full stack is mostly focused on front end and back end, and it would not cover complete DevOps roadmap or complete DevOps journey. So I would
Mhm.
still suggest to learn more about DevOps, because full stack developer roadmap will only cover only few of the parts of DevOps. Maybe it would cover Git and maybe Maven, but definitely not all the other tools that Rishabh and Sweta and I are talking about.
Right. So that's a crisp, and I guess I cannot agree more than that on that part. Ravi has a common question for all three of you, and I guess this is a very important. I believe everybody wants to know what should be taken in consideration or a prerequisite before implementing DevOps in a project. And I guess it's not about a tool that we are talking here, it's all about a culture or a mindset that we want to implement. So what do you think? So like if my organization wants to adopt DevOps roadmaps, or I should say if I'm a digital disruptors of the market and I want to opt for DevOps, what is that key things that I should always look in mind? So let's start with Harsh. Why don't you kick off, and then let's join by Shweta and Rishabh.
Yeah, I would say the prerequisite would be how much your app or service or website wants to scale. If it's a small scale one, then I would not think a lot about DevOps at this point. But if it wants to scale, then I would say DevOps would be very important. And I still remember when we moved from just like Shweta said, from waterfall to agile, and then we moved to different teams that were working in developers and operations in my previous organization. So the first thing is the person should know about scripting and the things that operations teams do. So there needs to be a form of a KT or knowledge transfer between the two teams about what are the actual roles and responsibilities of each and every team uh, that they are going to take once there is a single team. So that is one of the prerequisites or considerations that people should know about before going on to DevOps. I think that's the first one of the first, I would say.
Shweta, want to add?
Yeah, like to add upon this, like we need to consider like how often we can come up with like new feature, because like will be following like sprint basic kind of things. Like if you want to come up with like sprint, okay, in 15 days again we'll be coming up with like new feature or like release added for the project. And also like if we are maintaining some particular team for the DevOps, like where they'll be monitoring and like doing the deployment for the projects and all, they need to consider that as well before like going with the DevOps options in that, because it is not like something, okay, the build test and like deploy it is completed. We need to monitor that. And also when the new feature is coming, how we can go with that deployment perspective and all. Along with that, like it will be looking for like security things. If it is like small project, as like Harsh was mentioning, that is fine. Like if we are going with a big project with a DevOps thing, they need to consider the security operations as well. That's where like DevSecops will be, they need to implement that as well along with the DevOps. Like they'll be monitoring. Yeah, when it comes to like DevSecops, they need to consider like mainly three E's, which is like empowerment, enablement, and education. Empowerment is something like that there should be a good collaboration. If they are maintaining the development and operations teams, there should be good collaboration with that. And also the enablement is something like what tools they'll be choosing in the DevOps project, like whether if they are going with like OpenShift tools or like open source tools, those kind of things, they should analyze and then they need to proceed with the implementing the DevOps in their project. And also educating is something, the whole team should be aware of, like what is the DevOps perspective, how it should be, the flow should be there, everyone should be aware in the team, like how the flow of DevOps will be going on all. Then only they can come up with like DevOps in their project. That's what like I'll be preferring.
Okay. And Rishabh, your thought on this?
If you were to take my opinion, I would say you basically need to ask yourself these two questions. I would say you need to ask yourself, how often do you deploy your application in production? So what is the rate of deployment in a production? If it is too often, yes, definitely you need to implement DevOps in your project. Second thing which I would ask myself before considering implementing DevOps is whether my application is based on a monolith architecture or is it a microservice architecture? Because the moment my application becomes a microservice, it needs to deal with a lot of modules which has to be packed into containers, and then you need to introduce container orchestration into your project, which indirectly opts for things like CI/CD, and then it calls for the DevOps approach. So how often do you deploy in production, and is your application a monolith or a microservice, are the key things which I would consider before implementing DevOps in my project.
Right, make absolutely sense. So thank you so much, the panel, for giving. And I hope Ravi, you got the question. But so taking the last question from the chat, and this question is by a very smart guy, and this is me. So I want, before we jump onto your individual like piece of advice, so this handsome man want to ask that, being a fresher or an experienced fellow, or being a person who loves open source, do you think which all are the communities that one should participate in and want to be a contributor in terms of documentation, testing, or even the part of coding? So if you want to name few of the communities that anybody can be a part of it and can enhance their knowledge out of it. So over to you all. So Rishabh, why don't you kick off this time?
Yeah. Well, the whole beauty of open source is, you can start participating with any community. It's not limited to a number of communities. That's the whole point of open source. But
Right.
since I am actively involved with the Epicure community, and since I know the ins and outs of it, I would highly encourage everybody to check out the Epicure community. We have a suite of different products that we deal with API designing and contract first approach. We have a designer, we have a registry, and things like that. And you can even start with Quarkus, which Harsh is a part of. So he can talk about Quarkus later. But if you ask me, I would highly encourage you to check out the Epicure community. You can start by checking out the issues that are pending. Check whether you can start contributing to those pending issues or not. And let's say you are just a beginner, try to looking for, just check out the documentation and start looking for some, maybe there's a link which is broken. It's not redirecting you to anywhere. Start by creating a pull request, or by creating an issue saying that documentation has outdated information, and create a pull request updating the same, or create a pull request fixing the broken link. So this is how a beginner can get started, by checking out the issues and contributing to that.
Thank you, Harsh. Thank you, Rishabh. So Harsh, any like communities you want everybody should take part in?
Yeah, just like Rishabh said, that the beauty of open source is we can contribute to any community of our liking, maybe our area of maybe programming language we have in preference of, maybe some area we are having preference of. I contribute to the project Quarkus. I would paste a link later on in this YouTube chat. So Quarkus is basically a cloud native framework which is used to create microservices. So that's a one line description of Quarkus. So you can contribute it. There is a contributing guide on how to contribute it. You can look at the issues or uh, uh, the pull request, and you can start contributing from day one. And the community is also huge and very helpful. And yeah, so if there are any issues, you can ping me anytime, and I would be happy to help through the community.
Awesome. So Quarkus is one more. So Shweta, any additions from your side as well?
Yeah, I would like to go with like if the person is like good with Kubernetes cluster things and all, they can go with like Knative OpenShift serverless, like where they can build deploy for those things and all on top of like Kubernetes. So if they are like very much active with the Kubernetes cluster things and all, it will be good. They can go and contribute for like Knatives where like they'll be maintaining like serving and eventing and even the Kafka things and all. So they can go with the issues. And like yeah, for the beginners there is an option like it is my first issue, so it will be automatically filtering out like which they can start with. So that is the one easy thing like where they can start the OpenShift contribution and all. So I feel like they can go with Knatives also with Kubernetes build and deploy.
I guess we have given 2 to 3 communities names, so people please feel free to reach out to these. And thank you so much. Means it was pleasure hosting you all. I guess questions will keep on coming, and we won't be able to answer all of them, but with respect of everybody's time, I am quite thankful from the entire team. Cheers with Gaurav, especially Harsh, Rishabh, and Shweta, for accepting my request and being here. So on Sunday Eve and spending your time to enlighten us with all your knowledge that you have. So before I ask we all to close this session, any piece of advice that you want to give to all the youngsters and all the experienced fellows and to all the viewers who are watching this video? So let's start off with Harsh. Harsh, any piece of advice that you want to give as a closing remark for everybody?
Yeah, I would like to say that keep learning and start learning from day one. I would like to say that, and there are many free resources available. You can watch YouTube videos. You can have courses on Udemy, and there are many other resources to start learning. And yeah, so that would be my closing advice, I would say.
So that is definitely there. And Harsh, I just want to sincerely thank you for being with us and guiding us with a lot of like clarity of concepts that you brought in. And I'll be looking forward to interact with you even more, talking about that SRE and DevOps. So thank you so much for accepting the request on the behalf of entire team. Cheers with Gaurav. Thank you so much, Harsh.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So now let's me bring on another. So Shweta, any piece of advice you want to give to all the viewers?
I would tell like keep learning as like we know like CI/CD is not that continuous integration same way like continuous learning. Keep updated with like new technology and tools because like we have like too much of competition with like DevOps word. Like we need to keep on updated with the technologies. And also like I prefer like getting certification. Some of the certification will add more value to the tagline of ours. So that will be good. Like that's all I wanted to tell.
Means you already give us that perspective that it's not about CI/CD, it's all about continuous learning. So thank you so much, Shweta, for joining us on Team Cheers with Gaurav. Thank you so much for accepting the request on Sunday and being with us. Stay safe.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shweta. So now let me bring my friend Rishabh. So here, Rishabh, what would be your advice to all the viewers who are watching this channel?
I would say, start spending at least 30 minutes every day learning something new. And we often tend to keep targets to ourselves, saying, I learn these things and that things, but we don't bound our targets with time. So give a target to yourself which is time bound, and do not procrastinate or delay things every day. Start learning. Spend 30 minutes every day, learn something new. It should not be related to your work. You can learn anything. And instead of spending the entire Sunday 6 hours learning something new, I would say learn 30 minutes every day. That is how you will be able to achieve your target in time. So yeah.
Definitely means learning 30 minutes. I would say still you just hear Cheers with Gaurav, and I guess learning is endless. So that's what I can say. So with that, I want to bring you all on the screen. somebody has turned on the video. That's good way to increase our viewerships. Thank you so much. So Shweta, Harsh, and Rishabh, thank you so much on behalf of entire team Cheers with Gaurav for being here with us. Stay safe, guys, and keep sharing your thoughts. And please feel free to share the link of the communities that you discussed with me in the video comment so that our all viewers can take the advantage of it, or even you just share it with me offline. And for all the viewers, please reach out to Shweta, Harsh, and Rishabh. They will respond you back on the LinkedIn. Do drop a message and be patient. They will revert you for sure. And let's see. And if you want to hear us back again, do comment on the video that we want to do this panel once again, and I'll be reaching out to them personally and requesting them that, hey, let's do this session once again. So till the time, thank you so much, Rishabh and Harsh and Shweta, for being here with us on Cheers with Gaurav. Thank you so much. No.
Thank you.
That is not going to be an end. How we can miss that deal of saying, guys, you have to make my day by saying that, hey, please like, share, and subscribe to Cheers with Gaurav. Thank you so much. So please, guys, if you wish to, please, that will definitely make my day.
Yes, definitely to all the viewers out there, please like, share, and subscribe. Cheers with Gaurav.
Yeah,
Harsh,
please like,
please
share,
go.
and subscribe. Cheers with Gaurav. The link is in the description, I would say.
Like, share, and
You
subscribe.
got it.
Like, share, and subscribe to Gaurav's channel, and also click the bell icon for new notification.
Yes, that's the
Yes.
most important part. So thank you so much, Shweta. Thank you so much, Rishabh. Thank you so much, Harsh. See you guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you. So for all the people, guys, as rightly our panel said, thank you so much for being here with us. Like, share, and subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to hit that bell icon, and I'll see you with another exciting video lined up for you all. Stay safe, and whenever you find some time, please go and get yourself vaccinated. It's more important for you, everyone, to stay safe in these tough times and be with your loved ones and spend every single day learning something new. So till the time the next video comes out, I'll take a leave. Cheers with Gaurav, signing off. Stay safe, keep learning, keep enjoying. Thank you so much, guys.